As 130 guests sat frozen in silence, the sting on my cheek was nothing compared to the ache in my heart. My daughter-in-law, Hannah, had just slapped me across the face on her wedding day because I wouldn't hand her the keys to my apartment. "That's what you get for being so selfish," she shouted, her voice echoing through the hall. "A woman your age doesn't need that much space." The silence that followed was unbearable. Not a single person moved to help me as I crouched down, trembling, to pick up my shattered glasses. Some guests looked away, others whispered to one another, but no one, absolutely no one, defended me, the poor old mother-in-law who had just been humiliated in front of everyone. My son Daniel didn't even look up. He stood there with his eyes fixed on the floor, as if I were invisible. "You're not welcome here anymore," Hannah continued, smoothing down her perfect white gown. "Daniel and I need privacy to start our new life. Your apartment is exactly what we need until we find something better." Her words dripped with poison. For months I had endured her snide remarks about my old clothes, my outdated car, my simple life. But this slap crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I rose slowly, aware of every pair of eyes stabbing into me. Tears rolled down my face, but something inside me shifted forever. That slap wasn't just physical. It was the end of everything I had endured quietly. For years I had kept myself small, living humbly, never drawing attention. Even my son didn't know the truths I carried. Memories of the past months rushed back as I made my way toward the door. I thought of the first time Hannah came to my apartment 2 years ago. Her face fell when she saw my modest home, my old furniture, my tiny kitchen. "Seriously, this is where Daniel's mom lives?" she had muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. From that day on, every visit was silent torture. "Margaret, you should really move to a smaller place," she had told me just 3 months ago during dinner. "At your age, you can't keep up with such a big apartment. And besides, Daniel and I are planning to have children. We'll need more space." Her smile had been sweet only to him. At first it was little insults about my clothes. "Don't you have anything more modern to wear, Margaret?" Then it was my car. "That old thing is dangerous, you shouldn't be driving it." Next came my part-time job at the flower shop. "Why is a woman your age still working instead of resting?" Each comment was a dagger, chipping away at my dignity. "My name is Margaret Walker. I'm 68 years old. All my life I've chosen a quiet, simple existence. I work 3 days a week at a small flower shop. I drive a 10-year-old sedan. I buy my clothes at discount stores. To outsiders, and especially to Hannah, I look like just another middle-class widow getting by on a fixed income. But that image was carefully crafted. No one in that room knew the truth of who I really was before my husband, William, passed. He hadn't been the average office worker everyone assumed. Together we had made the decision to live modestly, to keep our real wealth hidden, for privacy and for protection. As I stepped out of the ballroom, whispers trailed behind me like smoke. "Poor thing, she looks so fragile," I heard Hannah's aunt say. "The bride is right. She can't take care of herself anymore," Daniel's cousin added. "She should be in a retirement home." Their words burned like acid. The ballroom's cool air was nothing compared to the fire in my chest. My hand shook as I dug through my old black purse for my phone. That purse had lasted 5 years, not because I couldn't afford another, but because I valued practicality over vanity. Something Hannah would never understand. I dialed a number I hadn't used in over a year. "Michael, it's Margaret. I need you to come to the Royal Oaks ballroom immediately." "Yes, right now. And bring the documents. It's time." My voice quivered, but there was a steel in it I hadn't felt in years. "Are you sure, Mrs. Walker?" Michael asked cautiously. "Once this happens, there's no going back." I glanced through the doorway one last time. Hannah was laughing with her bridesmaids, probably bragging about how she had put me in my place. Daniel stood beside her, smiling faintly, not even flinching at what he'd just allowed. "I'm sure," I said. 30 minutes, Michael. No later." I hung up and walked to my car with firm steps. For the first time in years, I was ready to remove the mask I had worn to protect my family. For the first time, they were going to meet the real Margaret Walker. And when they did, when their fake, perfect world collided with the truth, they'd finally understand the weight of regret. The parking lot was quiet, lit by streetlights that stretched long shadows across the asphalt. I sat down in my old sedan and waited. 30 minutes. That's all it would take for their lives to change forever. 30 minutes until they realized the biggest mistake they had ever made was underestimating me, the woman who had been protecting them all along. As I waited, memories surged like a flood I couldn't stop. It all began 2.5 years earlier, the day Daniel had walked into my apartment with that sheepish grin I remembered from his childhood. "Mom, I want you to meet someone special," he had said. And there she was, Hannah, with her salon-perfect hair, her designer dress, and that smile that never touched her eyes. From the very beginning I knew something was off. The way she glanced around my apartment, sizing up every corner with hidden contempt, told me everything I needed to know. "How cozy," she murmured as her eyes landed on my second-hand furniture and faded curtains. The tone of her voice said the opposite. Daniel, blinded by what he thought was love, missed it completely. That first dinner was a disaster. Hannah barely touched the food I had worked so hard to prepare, claiming she was on a diet. When I asked about her family, she dodged the questions, but not before digging into mine. "And how do you manage on a widow's pension, Margaret? It must be hard making ends meet," she asked with false sympathy. What she didn't realize was that while she was watching me, I was watching her just as closely. Over the next months, I caught the patterns. Every visit came with subtle digs about my outdated apartment or old-fashioned life. But her eyes always lingered on what mattered: the prime location, the balcony view, the size of my rooms. One afternoon, while Daniel was in the bathroom, I overheard her whispering into the phone. "Yes, Mom. His mom's apartment is in a super expensive area. If I can convince her to move to something smaller, we could live here for a while. She's so naive, she'll probably even thank us for helping her." Her words cut me to the bone, but when she came back into the living room, I kept my face calm. From that moment, every interaction with Hannah became a performance. She acted like the caring daughter-in-law, and I pretended to be the fragile, clueless widow. But inside I was watching, listening, piecing together her real intentions. It was a chess game, and she didn't even realize she wasn't winning. Her manipulation escalated over time. First, gentle suggestions. "Margaret, I saw some wonderful apartments for seniors. All-inclusive services, no worries about maintenance." Then came the pressure. "You can't keep living alone. It's dangerous. What if you fell and no one found you for days?" Daniel began parroting her words as if they were his own. "Mom, Hannah's right. Maybe it's time you thought about downsizing." Hearing him speak like that, as though he were no longer my son but her puppet, hurt more than any insult she could ever throw at me. After their engagement, the visits became unbearable. Hannah started leaving real estate brochures scattered across my coffee table, saying, "I'm just exploring options for you, Margaret. I want you to have the best life possible." She spoke like it was a business deal, not my life. But I had my own sources. One day after they left, I called Linda, an old friend in real estate. "Linda, I need you to look into something. There's a couple who seem awfully interested in my apartment. Find out what you can about their finances." What she found chilled me. Hannah and Daniel were drowning in debt. Their $50,000 wedding was financed by loans and credit cards. Their apartment lease was about to be canceled for non-payment. Their shiny cars were tied up in loans they couldn't afford. Their perfect lifestyle was nothing but smoke and mirrors. Suddenly, everything made sense. The wedding rush, the pressure to move, the comments about my so-called vulnerability. It wasn't love that brought them together. It was desperation. My apartment was their ticket out of ruin. The realization hit like a hammer. My son, the boy I had raised with honesty and hard work, had chosen greed. He let an ambitious woman convince him to see me, his own mother, not as a person to be loved, but as a resource to be exploited. 3 days before the wedding, Hannah confronted me one last time. "Margaret, you can't keep being selfish. Daniel and I have sacrificed so much for this marriage. The least you can do is help us with housing." There was no disguise left in her tone. It was a demand, plain and simple. That night I called Michael, my financial advisor, and the only person I trusted completely after William's death. "Michael, prepare the documents. It might be time to reveal everything." His tone turned serious immediately. "Mrs. Walker, are you sure? Once this comes out, there's no going back. The fallout could destroy your family." But I had already made up my mind. The family I had protected with silence had betrayed me. Now, as I sat in my car waiting for Michael to arrive, I knew the moment had come. 25 more minutes, and everyone would know the truth about Margaret Walker. 25 more minutes, and their perfect illusion would come crashing down. The night breeze rattled the trees, shadows swaying under the lamplight. It was strangely poetic. On such a beautiful night, so many lies were about to die. From my car, I could see the warm golden glow pouring out of the ballroom windows, hear the laughter and music drifting into the night. It was strange to think that in just a few minutes, that joyful celebration would turn into something very different for the ones at the center of it all. I shut my eyes and let the worst memories of the past months wash over me. I needed to remind myself why I had come to this moment of no return. The most degrading experience had taken place only 2 weeks before the wedding, during what Hannah called a family meeting. But it wasn't a meeting, it was an ambush. She arrived at my apartment with Daniel at her side, and trailing behind them were her parents. From the moment they stepped in, I could feel the trap tightening. "Margaret, we want to talk to you about your future," her mother began, a polished woman with cold eyes who looked at me as though I were a nuisance. Her father, a broad-shouldered man, glanced around my apartment with the sharp eyes of someone evaluating a piece of real estate. "At your age, living alone in a place this size isn't just unnecessary. It's dangerous. What if something happened and no one found you for days?" Their words rolled out like lines they had practiced over and over. Daniel sat silently, nodding from time to time like a well-trained puppet. Watching him side with people who treated me like I was disposable felt like watching the sun I had raised disappear in front of my eyes. Finally Daniel spoke, his voice sounding foreign to me. "Mom, they're right. Hannah and I have been talking, and we think it would be better for everyone if you moved somewhere more suitable for your age." "More suitable for my age?" I repeated, my anger simmering. "And who exactly gets to decide what's appropriate for me? You?" Hannah's parents exchanged a quick, knowing glance, as if my resistance was part of the script they had already rehearsed. "Margaret, we know this isn't easy to hear," her mother said smoothly, "but you need to think about what's best for Daniel and Hannah." "What's best for them?" I murmured, finally seeing the entire scheme. "And I suppose my apartment would be the perfect solution for their new married life, wouldn't it?" The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. They didn't even try to hide it anymore. Hannah leaned forward then, her voice dripping with false compassion. "Margaret, it's not just about the apartment. It's about your well-being. We've done research and found a beautiful residence for people your age. 24-hour medical care, social activities, meals prepared for you. You could make friends with others who understand what you're going through." Her sugary smile made me want to be sick. "And what exactly do you think I'm going through, Hannah?" I asked, pretending not to understand. She darted her eyes toward Daniel before answering. "Well, loneliness, financial worries, maybe fear of not being able to manage on your own. It's normal at your age. You shouldn't be ashamed of needing help." The nerve of this 28-year-old woman lecturing me about what was normal left me momentarily stunned. But then I caught something chilling in her gaze. The absolute certainty that my life, my home, my decisions all belonged to her. I was no longer a person. To her, I was just an obstacle to be moved out of the way. Her father pulled out a folder like it was a business deal. "We've run the numbers. The residence costs about $2,500 a month. Selling your apartment would cover it for years. And of course, there'd still be enough left over to help Daniel and Hannah get started." And there it was. The truth laid bare. It wasn't about my safety or health. It was about money. My apartment was nothing more than their ticket to survival. "And if I refuse?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Daniel's voice was flat, rehearsed. "Mom, we hope it won't come to that. But if your mental health ever declines, we'd have to consider more serious measures." The threat was clear. If I didn't give in willingly, they were ready to drag me into court and have me declared incompetent. They had done their research. They had a plan. And my son, the boy I had raised with everything I had, was sitting silently while strangers threatened to strip me of everything. That night, after they left, I cried harder than I had in years, not out of sadness, but because I finally buried the illusions I had clung to about my son. I called Michael immediately. "I need you to investigate something," I told him through tears. "Everything about Daniel and Hannah. Debts, income, liabilities, everything. The results nearly broke me. Daniel's salary as a sales manager was about $45,000 a year, but his credit card debt was already over $80,000. Hannah worked part-time as some kind of image consultant, making barely $4,000 a year, but she spent money like she was a CEO. Together, their debt had climbed past $120,000, not including the loans they'd taken for the wedding. Their apartment rent was 3 months overdue. Their cars ate up 60% of their income in loan payments. Their credit cards were maxed out, and they had started taking cash advances just to stay afloat. And my apartment was their only hope of salvation. But there was something worse. Something in Michael's report that shattered my heart completely. For 6 months, Daniel had been contacting banks and insurance companies, asking about loans he could take against his elderly mother's property. He'd even inquired about how to obtain financial power of attorney over a senior. My son had been planning to strip me bare for months. The final blow came when Michael's investigator uncovered Hannah's conversations with her friends. She had openly admitted she was marrying an older, less attractive man because his mother owned valuable property and had no heirs to compete with. To her, marriage was not love, it was an investment strategy. That night, the last thread of hope inside me snapped. For weeks, I had thought about revealing my real financial situation, imagining that maybe the truth would wake them up. But after reading that report, I understood. This wasn't about desperation. It was cold, calculated greed. The days before the wedding were torture. Every call from Daniel was another push for me to reconsider. Every visit from Hannah came with sharp little jabs about how stubborn and selfish I was. They treated me like I was already a senile old woman who didn't matter. The night before the ceremony, Daniel made one last attempt. "Mom, tomorrow's the most important day of my life. Please don't ruin it by being difficult. Hannah only wants what's best for us." His words confirmed what I already knew. I had lost my son for good. Now, sitting in my car waiting for Michael to arrive, I realized this moment was inevitable. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It was justice. It was the consequences of choices they had made. And it was the only way to teach them that some lines should never ever be crossed. 15 more minutes, I told myself, and everything would change forever. My hands trembled as I dialed another number. Frank, my 70-year-old neighbor, who had been a quiet witness to the tension of the past few months. "Frank, it's Margaret. I need a big favor. Go into my apartment and bring me the brown folder from the second drawer of my desk. Please, it's urgent." Frank had been like a brother to me since William passed, and I trusted him without question. Just a week earlier he had warned me. "Margaret, that young woman brought a man with a briefcase around your building. He was measuring your apartment. When they saw me watching, they left. I don't like this one bit." He had also noticed Daniel's coldness. "Your boy doesn't greet me anymore. He used to stop and chat. Now he sneaks in and out like he's ashamed." His words had only confirmed what I already felt. I had lost my son long before the slap. The folder I asked him for contained documents no one had ever seen. Bank records, property titles, investment statements William and I had hidden away for decades. Proof that the poor widow living on a pension was actually a woman with resources that could change lives in an instant. 10 minutes later, Frank appeared in the parking lot with the folder in hand. "Margaret, what's going on? You look upset." "It's about Daniel's wedding," I said, giving him the barest explanation. His face darkened as he listened. "That woman is poison," he muttered. "I always knew it. Frank, a man named Michael will arrive soon. When you see him, send him my way. And Frank, after tonight a lot of things will change. I want you to know you've always been family to me." His eyes filled with tears as he nodded. "You're family to me too, Margaret. Do what you have to do." As Frank walked back, I opened the folder and skimmed through the papers I hadn't touched in months. The first was a bank statement, $5.4 million in an investment account. The second was the deed to an office building downtown that earned $50,000 in rent every month. The third was the title to a beach house William and I had bought years ago. He had been brilliant at investments, building a hidden empire out of nothing. We had chosen to live modestly, to keep our wealth invisible. "Invisible wealth gives you power," William always said. "Visible wealth brings trouble." Never in my worst dreams did I imagine I'd have to use that power against my own son. The flower shop job, my old car, my simple apartment. All of it had been a disguise. The truth was, my apartment was the least valuable of my properties. I kept it for sentimental reasons. It was where William and I had shared our last years, where we dreamed of our future, and where he died in my arms. And tucked in that folder was something even more devastating for Daniel and Hannah. For 3 years, I had secretly been paying many of Daniel's debts. The credit card payments he thought came from work bonuses? Those were my transfers. The discount he thought he got on rent? That was me sending money to his landlord every month. I had been propping up his lifestyle without him ever realizing it. Even parts of the wedding that very night had been paid for by me. I thought I was helping my son. In reality, I was enabling his downfall. The bank record showed $4,500 a month leaving my accounts, disguised as random income, just to keep him afloat. The bitter irony hit me. I was the reason they could even afford this wedding. I was the invisible hand keeping their fragile world from collapsing. I closed the folder and looked back at the ballroom. The lights still glowed. The music still played. The laughter still spilled out into the night. But in less than 5 minutes, Michael would arrive with the final documents. In less than 5 minutes, I would cut the last financial ties I had used to protect the son who had betrayed me. This wasn't revenge, I reminded myself. This was justice. This was about consequences. Headlights cut across the parking lot, blinding me for a moment. Michael had arrived, punctual as ever, a leather brief tucked under his arm. I stepped out of my car, each step carrying me further away from the Margaret I used to be and closer to the woman I needed to become. "Mrs. Walker," Michael greeted me. "Are you absolutely certain? Once we do this, there's no going back." I glanced toward the ballroom one last time, imagining Daniel and Hannah still basking in their illusion of victory. "I've never been more certain in my life," I told him. "It's time they met the real Margaret Walker." Michael opened his folder beneath the parking lot lights. "Here's the order to immediately suspend all transfers in Daniel's name. And here's the notice of cancellation for the lease you secretly guaranteed. The landlord will receive it in the morning." I took the papers with shaking hands, but there was no hesitation left in me. Each signature I gave was another threat cut. "And the ballroom payment?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Cancelled," Michael confirmed. "The deposit you guaranteed will be revoked tonight. By tomorrow, they'll need to come up with another form of payment." The weight of it all hit me. For 3 years I had been the net that kept them afloat. Their apartment, their cars, even this wedding, all made possible because of me. And now in one night I was pulling it all away. "Michael," I said as I signed the last document, my voice steady at last. "Understand this. This isn't cruelty. And it isn't revenge. This is the only way they'll ever learn the real value of things," I told myself as I signed the last paper. "For too long, I've shielded them from consequences, and that protection has twisted them into people I no longer recognize." "I understand completely, Mrs. Walker," Michael said, his voice steady but respectful. "In my 30 years as a financial advisor, I've watched families destroyed by greed and thanklessness. What you're doing now, it takes more courage than most people have." His words gave me the final strength to move forward. Together we walked toward the ballroom doors. With each step my pulse quickened. Not from nerves, but from the heavy cocktail of grief and anticipation. Grief for the son I had already lost. Anticipation for what I was about to reclaim. My dignity, my self-respect, and my right to be treated as a human being, not as a resource. The music cut off abruptly when we stepped into the ballroom. 130 pairs of eyes turned our way. I could feel the confusion ripple through the guests. Some recognized Michael instantly. His reputation as a man who managed the finances of half the city's elite was well known. His presence at an event like this could only mean one thing. Something serious was about to unfold. Hannah was the first to speak. She stood in the middle of the dance floor, still holding Daniel's arm as the photographer lowered his camera. "What are you doing here, Margaret?" she snapped, her shrill voice bouncing against the walls. "You left once already. Isn't that enough drama for one night?" The arrogance I'd come to know so well was still there, but beneath it, I caught something new: fear. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael said firmly, his voice carrying across the hall. I apologize for interrupting this celebration, but I have urgent legal matters that concern Mr. Daniel Walker and Mrs. Hannah Dawson. A hush fell over the room so complete you could hear the air conditioning hum. Guests began pulling out their phones, sensing they were about to witness a spectacle. Daniel stepped forward slowly, his face pale, his eyes uncertain. Mom, what is this? Who is this man? And why is he talking about legal matters? He tugged at his tie, the nervous habit he'd had since boyhood. Daniel, I said, my voice stronger than it had sounded in years. This is Michael Reed, my financial and legal advisor. He's here to deliver some documents that you need to hear. Michael opened his folder and held up the first paper. Mr. Daniel Walker, you are hereby notified that the financial guarantee your mother provided for your lease agreement has been revoked. Your landlord will be informed tomorrow. You'll have 30 days to secure another guarantor or vacate the premises. I watched the blood drain from Daniel's face. Financial guarantee? He muttered, his eyes snapping to me. Mom, what is he talking about? He looked horrified, but part of him already knew. Deep down, he'd always suspected that his luck wasn't entirely natural. He just chose not to ask, afraid of the answers. Michael continued mercilessly. The monthly transfers of $4,500 that your mother has been making into your personal accounts have also been permanently suspended. This includes payments that have been covering credit card bills, car insurance, and various other expenses. Gasps rippled across the ballroom. Hannah's voice sliced through the silence, panicked and shrill. That's not possible. Ethan doesn't. Daniel doesn't have a rich mother. Look at her. Look at her clothes, her old car. She works in a flower shop. She's just a poor old woman scraping by. Her hysteria sent whispers buzzing across the room. Some guests turned to stare at her. Others smirked at her unraveling composure. Michael pulled out the last document. And lastly, the payment guarantee for this very celebration has also been cancelled. The management of the ballroom will have the right to demand immediate settlement before any guest is permitted to leave. It was as if a bomb had gone off. Guests shifted uneasily, some drifting toward the exits, suddenly unsure if they'd even be able to leave without a scene. Daniel's face crumpled. You, he whispered, his voice cracking. All this time you've been paying for everything? For the briefest second I saw the little boy he once was, confused, scared, vulnerable. For 3 years, Daniel, I said softly, my voice calm after months of turmoil. 3 years I thought I was helping you survive a rough patch. 3 years I believed you would turn yourself around and become the man I raised. 3 years I hoped you'd remember the values your father and I tried to teach you. Hannah staggered in circles, clutching her head. This can't be real. It's impossible. You're a nobody. You wear discount clothes, drive a junk car. You can't possibly have money. Appearances deceive, Hannah. I told her evenly, feeling decades of carefully maintained disguise fall away. My husband and I chose a modest life because we knew wealth on display brings trouble. We were right. We just never imagined the trouble would come from inside our own family. The ballroom was dead silent now. Phones were raised, recording what everyone knew was a once-in-a-lifetime scandal. Daniel's voice wavered. Mom, please. There has to be some way to fix this. The wedding, the guests, everything. You can't just. I shook my head. The only way to fix this, Daniel, was never to break it in the first place. Gasps rippled through the crowd again. Hannah froze for the first time without a retort, her eyes darting wildly between Michael, the papers, and my face, searching for an escape from the reality caving in on her. Mrs. Walker, Michael said, his voice rising so that every guest could hear. Would you like me to proceed with the full financial summary? The room leaned in collectively, caught between horror and fascination. Yes, Michael, I answered, steady as stone. I think everyone deserves to hear the truth. Hannah screeched something unintelligible, but Michael raised his hand and pressed on with surgical precision. In the past 36 months, Mrs. Margaret Walker has transferred a total of $162,000 to support her son Daniel Walker and his fiancée. This includes $48,000 in rent, $44,000 in credit card bills, $18,000 for vehicle insurance, and $22,000 for miscellaneous expenses. A wave of murmurs swept across the room. Guests widened their eyes, some tapping figures into calculators on their phones. At the head table, Hannah's mother rose slowly, her face ghostly pale. And furthermore, Michael said, Mrs. Walker also personally guaranteed the total cost of this celebration, ballroom, catering, music, flowers, photography, for $53,000. As stated earlier, that guarantee is now void. Hannah let out a strangled cry. This is a lie. No one hides that much money while living like a pauper. She turned to the crowd for support but found only stunned stares, and a few smirks. My dear Hannah, I said with quiet finality, you've just learned the most important lesson of your life. Never judge a person by appearances. For years I chose simplicity because William and I valued privacy over show. That choice, it turns out, was the wisest one we ever made. Daniel stumbled closer, desperation dripping from his voice. Mom, there has to be an explanation. There has to be a way out of this. You can't just ruin my life like this. Ruin your life? I echoed, heat rising in my chest. I'm not ruining your life, Daniel. Wasn't it your wife who slapped me in front of 130 people? Wasn't it you who stood there like a stranger while I was humiliated? Wasn't it you who schemed to take my home away from me? My words rang through the ballroom like church bells, sharp and undeniable. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some nodding, others whispering, remembering the moment Hannah's hand had struck my face. A few even had their phones out with proof, videos of the very slap that had sparked all of this. But that was different, Daniel stammered, though his voice cracked. We didn't know. We didn't understand. We thought you really needed help. His excuses sounded so thin, so pitiful, that several guests exchanged looks of open disgust. You didn't know? I said, my voice rising for the first time that night. You didn't know you staged a family ambush to force me out of my own home? You didn't know you sent an appraiser without my consent? You didn't know you were researching legal ways to declare me incompetent if I resisted? Each question landed like a blow, and with every word, Daniel's shoulders sank lower. Michael stepped forward and pulled another paper from his folder. Mr. Walker, I must also inform you that your mother has amended her will. All assets previously designated for you have been redirected to charities committed to protecting seniors from family abuse. The silence that followed was thunderous. Hannah stumbled back as though struck. You can't do that, she screamed, her voice raw. We're your family. Daniel is your only son. You can't just disinherit him over some stupid fight. A stupid fight? I repeated, letting the words hang heavy in the air. Is that what you call a conspiracy to rob an old woman of her home? Is that what you call slapping your husband's mother on her own wedding day? My voice turned icy, and I saw guests recoil as the truth cut deeper than any slap ever could. Hannah's father, who had sat silent until then, stepped forward with panic written on his face. Mrs. Walker, we're all a bit carried away by emotions tonight. Perhaps we should take this conversation somewhere private, when things have calmed down. His words sounded more like damage control than genuine concern. There's nothing to discuss in private, I said, unflinching. This began in public in front of everyone here, and so it will end in public. The guests' heads swung between us like they were watching a match. Michael closed his folder with a snap that echoed like a gavel. Mrs. Walker, all documents have been delivered and explained. The legal effects begin immediately. He turned toward Daniel and Hannah, his tone still professional but tinged with satisfaction. I suggest you secure your own advisors at once. That was the breaking point. Hannah collapsed into a chair, her sobs tearing through the ballroom as her carefully crafted image disintegrated. Her wedding gown, once pristine, now sagged around her in a wrinkled, tear-stained heap. It's ruined, she choked. Everything we planned, everything we worked for. It's all gone. No, I said, stepping closer for the first time since she struck me. What's destroyed are the lies. What's destroyed is the greed and the lack of respect. What's destroyed is the illusion that you can treat people like objects without facing consequences. I stopped in front of her, forcing her to meet my eyes. This is what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. Daniel rushed to her side, laying a shaking hand on her shoulder. Hannah, we'll find a way. We can fix this. There has to be something we can do. But even as he spoke, I could see in his eyes that he knew the truth. Some bridges burn so completely they can never be rebuilt. There is a way to fix this, Daniel, I told him, looking into his eyes for the first time in months without breaking. You can learn from it. You can grow from it. You can become the man I once hoped you'd be. Before greed twisted you into someone I don't recognize. But you'll have to do it without my help. Without my money. Without my home. Without my inheritance. You'll have to do it the hard way, just like everyone else. The silence in that room was absolute. A silence so heavy it pressed on every chest. Everyone present understood. They had just witnessed the collapse of a family bond, final and irreversible. Michael and I turned toward the exit. Behind us, the ballroom felt frozen in shock, the guests wide-eyed, the newlyweds shattered. But then, "Wait!" a voice cried out. I turned. It was Sarah, Daniel's younger sister, running from the back of the room with tears streaming down her face. "Aunt Margaret," she said, breathless and trembling. "I swear I had no idea. Daniel never told me what they were planning." Sarah had always been dear to me, my favorite niece, a young teacher who had never lost her sense of decency. She had visited me when others hadn't. She had cared in ways her brother no longer did. "If I had known, I would have stopped them," she whispered. I touched her cheek gently. "I know, Sarah. You've always been different. You've never looked at people as opportunities or burdens. You've always seen hearts, not wallets." Her tears spilled harder. "But why didn't you tell us about the money? Why did you hide it all these years?" The question deserved honesty. "Because your Uncle William and I learned long ago that money destroys families. We watched friendships end over loans, children treat parents like banks, and relatives tear each other apart over inheritances. So we chose to live modestly, to protect the relationships that mattered most." Sarah nodded slowly, the truth settling in her heart. "But Daniel, he wasn't always like this. When we were kids, he would have defended you against anyone. What happened to him?" I sighed deeply. What happened to him was Hannah. What happened to him was greed masquerading as love. And what happened to him was me, protecting him for so long that I robbed him of the lessons he needed most: responsibility, consequences, and self-respect. The ballroom was utterly still, every guest devouring my words like scripture. Michael leaned closer. "Mrs. Walker, the manager is coming," he murmured. Sure enough, I saw Mr. Carter, the ballroom manager, striding toward us with papers in hand and a very grim expression. "Mrs. Walker," he said stiffly, "I've just received notice of a payment cancellation that raises serious concerns. The contract for this event was guaranteed until tomorrow morning. I need an explanation." "I understand, Mr. Carter," I said, steady as stone. "The financial guarantee I provided was revoked due to extraordinary circumstances revealed tonight." I gestured toward Daniel and Hannah, still standing like broken statues in the middle of the ballroom. Mr. Carter gave a slow nod, his eyes taking in the scene with the weary recognition of a man who'd seen too many disasters. "And who," he asked firmly, "will provide the remaining $53,000 for this event? Ballroom, catering, flowers, music, and photography. I'll need immediate payment." Daniel lurched forward, his desperation plain. "Mr. Carter, there must be a mistake. My mom, she can't just pull out. We're family. We can resolve this." His voice trembled with panic, the sound of a man finally realizing the ground had vanished beneath his feet. "Young man," Mr. Carter said evenly, "your mother signed the guarantee personally. It is her legal right to withdraw it at any time. Unless another form of payment is made immediately, I'll have no choice but to suspend this event." Hannah stumbled forward, her gown twisted and dirty, her makeup running down her cheeks. "You can't do this!" Hannah screamed at Mr. Carter, her voice cracking with hysteria. "It's our wedding day. You can't ruin it over money problems." "Ma'am," Carter replied, his tone sharpening, "I am not ruining anything. I am enforcing the contract you signed. If no alternative payment is provided immediately, I will suspend all services and ask your guests to leave." His ultimatum crashed over the ballroom like a verdict. Reality finally began to sink in. Some guests grabbed their purses and slipped toward the exits. Others lingered riveted, unable to look away from the wreckage of a wedding unraveling before their eyes. "Mom!" Daniel's voice cracked as he stepped closer, his eyes wet for the first time since boyhood. Please, I know what we did was wrong. I know we hurt you. But there are 130 people here. Photos, memories, you can't destroy all of this over one fight. I looked at him steadily. Daniel, I am not destroying anything. You destroyed this. When you chose greed over love. When you chose manipulation over honesty. When you allowed your wife to slap me and said nothing. Each word pierced him like a blade. What are we going to do? Hannah's voice rose in panic, her eyes darting from the guests still leaving to the mounting bills she could no longer ignore. How will we explain this? How will we pay for this? You'll do what responsible people do, I said firmly. You'll work. You'll earn. You'll learn to live within your means. And you'll finally understand what it feels like to stand on your own feet instead of standing on mine. The strength in my voice surprised even me. For decades I had held my tongue. Now the words poured out like a flood. Michael touched my arm discreetly. Mrs. Walker, the legal process is complete. All documents have been delivered. There is nothing more we can do here. His meaning was clear. It was time to leave. To let them face the consequences without me shielding them any longer. Before I could move, Sarah rushed forward and wrapped me in a trembling embrace. Aunt Margaret, no matter what happens with Daniel, you will always have my love and respect. Her words healed wounds that had nearly broken me. And you will always have mine, Sarah, I whispered back. Remember this night when you make your choices. Remember that character is not measured by what you own, but how you treat those you love. Her tears soaked my shoulder. She nodded. She understood. Mr. Carter returned, this time with visible impatience. Ladies and gentlemen, I need an immediate resolution. I cannot keep staff here indefinitely without payment. I turned back one last time to Daniel and Hannah. You have my phone number. When you are ready to talk about respect, responsibility, and true family, when you are ready to apologize sincerely for what you did to me, then we can talk. But first, my eyes burned into theirs. You will clean up this mess alone. With that, I turned and walked out with Michael at my side, leaving behind chaos, whispers, and the ashes of a ruined wedding. 3 days later, my apartment had become a sanctuary of peace I hadn't felt in years. Every morning, Henry came by with coffee and pastries from the bakery, insisting on keeping me company. He called it the week Margaret reclaimed her dignity. His presence was a balm, proof that real family isn't always blood. The phone rang relentlessly. 37 missed calls from Daniel, each voicemail shifting from fury to begging. 14 frantic texts from Hannah. 2 unwelcome visits from her parents, pounding on my door, demanding I fix the mess. I didn't answer. My resolve held. Michael visited that morning with grim news. Mrs. Walker, he said over tea. As expected, things have collapsed. Daniel and Hannah were evicted from their apartment yesterday. The ballroom has begun legal action for the $53,000. Their credit cards have been frozen. Their debts have caught up. And where are they now? I asked, though I already suspected. With Hannah's parents. A small 2-bedroom flat already overcrowded. Tensions are severe. Later that afternoon, while watering my balcony plants, I saw Sarah's car pull up. She wasn't alone. Amelia, my old friend from the real estate world, stepped out, followed by Henry. Their faces were etched with urgency. Margaret, Sarah called. We need to talk. There are things you must hear. Inside, Sarah laid a folder on my couch, official and heavy. I've been investigating since that night. And they weren't just careless. They had been planning this for over a year. My chest tightened. Planning what? Amelia opened the folder, her voice low and steady. Hannah consulted lawyers specializing in senior competency cases. They had a plan, a detailed one, to have you declared legally incompetent. Once that happened, Daniel would gain control of everything you own. Henry leaned forward, his face grim. There's more. That night, after you left the ballroom, I overheard Hannah on the phone. She said you'd ruined Plan A. But they still had Plan B. The words froze my blood. Plan B. I whispered. Sarah gripped my hand. They're spreading rumors already. Telling neighbors you're unstable. Using the wedding incident as proof you've lost touch with reality. They're building a case to put you under guardianship, Aunt Margaret. They mean to strip you of everything. Rage and sorrow churned inside me. It wasn't enough that they had humiliated me, schemed to steal my home, tried to paint me as senile. Now they were twisting my defense into their weapon. And that's not all, Amelia added, her hands trembling slightly. Hannah has been visiting neighbors, urging them to report any concerning behavior from you. It's systematic, calculated, a campaign to destroy your reputation. At that moment Michael entered, his face dark. Mrs. Walker, he said gravely, Daniel filed a preliminary petition yesterday. He is requesting a court evaluation of your mental competency, citing irrational behavior and reckless financial choices. He already has sworn statements from guests at the wedding, claims that you lashed out emotionally, that your decisions were vindictive, that you've lost judgment. Sarah's grip tightened. Aunt Margaret, they convinced people. Most don't understand what really happened. They just saw an old woman yelling at newlyweds. Henry broke the tension with a sudden grin. But there's good news too. Look. He handed me his phone. On the screen was a video. One of the wedding guests had posted the confrontation online, and it had gone viral. Thousands of comments flooded in. People weren't calling me senile. They were calling me brave. They see you as a woman standing up against abuse and manipulation, Amelia said, her eyes lighting with hope. The comments are overwhelmingly in your favor. Others are sharing their own stories of family betrayal. Margaret, you've become a symbol. Michael nodded, his professional calm restored. This will be crucial in court. It's difficult to prove incompetence when the public views you as clear-eyed, rational, and dignified. Their attempt to break you may have backfired. I rose slowly, crossing to my desk where a heavy folder waited. If Daniel and Hannah want a battle, I said, my voice steady as steel, then they will learn who I truly am. They think I am weak. They think I am defenseless. But they are about to discover exactly who they are fighting. For the last 3 days, I had been in constant contact with lawyers who specialize in elder abuse. Every detail was documented: the intimidating visits, the veiled threats, the conspiracy to take away my home, even the slap Hannah gave me. I showed them photographs of my swollen cheek taken right after the wedding, proof of the assault. If they want a war, I told my friends, with a fire I hadn't felt in decades, then they'll have a war. But it will be fought on my terms, with my resources, and with the truth on my side. I paused, then let a small, unexpected smile spread across my face. And I've decided to do something I should have done years ago. I'm going to tell my story publicly. I'm going to show the world what happens when greed disguises itself as family love. The room seemed to shift in that moment. There was a new kind of energy, the energy of people who knew justice was finally moving in the right direction. 6 months later, I was sitting in one of the biggest television studios in the city, waiting for the red light on the cameras to flicker on. The program was called Stories of a Lifetime, and it had become known for its honesty and integrity. After the videos from the wedding had exploded online, more than 2 million views across social media, the producers had begged Michael to arrange this interview. My story had become a national symbol of resistance against the abuse of seniors by their own families. The host, Catherine Diaz, a respected journalist, smiled warmly as she went over her notes. Mrs. Walker, she said kindly, you've inspired thousands of people with your courage. We've received hundreds of letters from viewers who have lived through situations like yours. Those words almost made me cry right there in the makeup chair. For months I had felt alone, wondering if I had been the one in the wrong. Now I knew the truth. I was far from alone. So much had changed. The case Daniel and Hannah had tried to build against me collapsed spectacularly once Michael presented evidence of their scheme to have me declared incompetent. Not only did they lose in court, but the judge fined them for filing a frivolous case and ordered them to cover my attorney's fees, $45,000. The fallout was swift. Daniel lost his job after the scandal went public. Hannah tried to start an image consulting business, but the viral videos had destroyed her reputation. The two of them now lived in a cramped one-bedroom apartment out in the suburbs, working part-time jobs and drowning in debt. We're live in 5, the director called out. I looked out at the cameras that would soon carry my story into millions of homes. Michael sat beside me, ready to explain the legal aspects. In the front row, Henry, Sarah, and Amelia were there, my anchor through this storm. But the absence I felt most was Daniel's. 6 months had passed without a single word from him. No calls. No letters. Not even an attempt to explain himself. It seemed easier for him to hate me than to face the truth. Hannah, on the other hand, had sent several messages. At first they were full of threats. Later they turned into desperate pleas for help. The last one, just 2 weeks ago, hit me hardest. "Margaret, I know we made mistakes, but we're family. Daniel is sick from stress and I'm pregnant. Please, you can't let your grandchild grow up in poverty." The words had cut deep. I was going to be a grandmother, but my grandchild would be raised in a home filled with resentment and blame. Still, I had learned a painful but essential truth. I cannot save people who don't want to be saved. 30 seconds, Catherine whispered. I breathed in slowly, remembering the hundreds of letters I had received from strangers who saw their own lives reflected in mine. Parents whose grown children treated them like banks. Seniors pressured into handing over their homes. Grandparents blackmailed with threats of never seeing their grandchildren unless they kept paying. The red light came on. Catherine's voice was calm but powerful. "Good evening, and welcome to Stories of a Lifetime. Tonight we bring you the remarkable story of Margaret Walker, a 68-year-old woman whose courage has inspired the nation and sparked a conversation about elder abuse and family betrayal. Mrs. Walker, 6 months after the events at your son's wedding, how does it feel knowing your story has touched so many people?" I steadied my voice. "Grateful," I said. "Grateful that something as painful as losing my relationship with my son has helped others recognize their own situations. For a long time I thought maybe I was wrong. But now I know this happens far more often than people admit." Catherine nodded, flipping a page of notes. "Tell us about the years leading up to that night. When did you begin to realize something wasn't right?" It was the question I had been waiting for. "It started small," I explained. "Little comments about my age. Subtle hints that I couldn't take care of myself. Quiet pressure to make decisions that benefited them, not me. Abuse doesn't start with yelling or violence. It begins with tiny cracks in your confidence, until you start doubting your own reality." Michael leaned forward. "What Margaret is describing," he told the viewers, "is a classic pattern in elder abuse cases. It starts with psychological manipulation disguised as concern, and only later escalates into open coercion." "And the breaking point?" Catherine asked. "What finally made you decide to expose the truth?" "The slap," I said simply. "When Hannah slapped me in front of 130 people, because I wouldn't hand over my apartment keys. That was the moment I knew. I realized it wasn't about protecting them anymore. It was about protecting myself." The interview lasted 45 minutes. I told everything: the secret financial support I had provided for years, the conspiracy to declare me incompetent, the legal fight that followed. My answers weren't just for me. They were for every person watching who might recognize themselves in my story. Near the end, Catherine asked the hardest question of all. "Do you have a message for your son if he's watching tonight?" I looked straight into the camera, my heart pounding. "Daniel, if you're listening, I want you to know I still love you. I will always love you because you are my son. But loving you doesn't mean letting you abuse me. Loving you doesn't mean sacrificing my dignity. Loving you doesn't mean becoming a victim of your greed. The doors to my heart will always be open, but only if you walk through them as the man I raised you to be. Only if you take responsibility for your choices. Only if you finally understand that family is built on respect, not manipulation." Then I turned my eyes to the viewers at home. And to anyone watching this who recognizes their own story in mine, remember this: you deserve dignity. No matter your age, you have the right to decide about your life, your money, your home. You have the right to set boundaries. And you have the right to say no, even to family. The studio fell silent. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. And you also have the right to reach out for help when those boundaries are crossed. When the cameras switched off, the studio erupted in applause. Even the crew, usually so professional and quiet, stood clapping. Catherine hugged me tightly, tears in her eyes. "Margaret, that was one of the most powerful interviews I've ever done. You're going to change lives." Michael gave me a proud nod. Knowing what we had accomplished was far bigger than winning any legal battle. That night, as Henry drove us back to my apartment with Sarah and Amelia in the back seat, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. I had told my story. I had defended my truth. And I had taken all that pain and turned it into something that could help others. Whatever the future held with Daniel, I knew deep inside that I had chosen the right path. "Margaret," Sarah said softly from the back seat, "I'm so proud of you. You turned the darkest moment of your life into a shield that will protect thousands of people." Her words echoed in my chest as we pulled up to my building. The little apartment Hannah had once schemed to take from me now felt more like home than ever before. Not because I had won in court, but because I had finally learned to value myself enough to demand respect. That night, as I prepared for bed, I understood something deeply. Sometimes the only way to save a relationship is to be willing to lose it. I had proven to myself, and to everyone watching, that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, never too late to demand dignity, and that sometimes real love requires the hardest choices. My story had ended, but my life was beginning all over again. 2 years have now passed since that night that split my life into a before and an after. As I write these words, I'm sitting on the same balcony where I once watered my plants and convinced myself that a mother's love meant tolerating endless humiliations. How different the world looks once you put a price on your dignity. Every morning for the last 18 months, my day has started with a call from Carmen, the coordinator of the Margaret Walker Foundation for the Protection of Seniors. Yes, I chose to use my name. I wanted survivors to know there was a face and a story behind the mission. "Margaret, we've taken on 23 new cases this week," Carmen said this morning. Her voice carried the same mix of sadness and resolve that defines all of us who do this work. Most are the same pattern. Adult children pressuring their parents for property or cash. Every file feels like looking into a mirror of my past. Yesterday, it was a 72-year-old woman whose daughter pushed her to sell her home for her own good, only to blow the money on a failed business and a luxury trip to Europe. The day before, it was a 69-year-old grandfather told by his twin sons, "If you don't lend us $50,000, you'll never see your grandkids again." The irony isn't lost on me. The darkest chapter of my life has become my greatest purpose. The foundation has now helped more than 400 seniors regain control of their homes, their savings, and most importantly, their dignity. We employ attorneys, social workers, therapists, and volunteers. We've built the kind of safety net I once wished I had. Henry is still my most loyal neighbor, though now he also serves as the foundation's vice president. At 72, he laughs that he's found his calling as a detective of dysfunctional families. "Margaret," he told me just last week while we reviewed case files, "I never thought retirement would mean becoming a watchdog for senior justice, but this is the best adventure of my life." Sarah lives next door now. After ending a short, unhappy marriage, she decided she wanted to be close to the bravest woman she knows. Or so she tells me. She runs our education department, building programs that teach seniors, and their families, how to spot manipulation before it takes root. "Aunt Margaret," she often says, "you taught me that real family isn't just who you're born to. It's the people who honor and respect you without condition." The public impact of my story has been overwhelming. The book I co-wrote with an investigative journalist, "When Love Hurts, An Elderly Woman Fights Back," became a national bestseller, selling over 200,000 copies. Every dollar of royalties goes to the foundation. Letters pour in weekly from readers who tell me my story gave them the courage to speak up. Michael, once my personal advisor, is now the foundation's chief accountant. He often reminds me during our monthly meetings, "Mrs. Walker, we've helped seniors recover more than $3 million in stolen savings and property." And then there's the question everyone asks. Do I miss Daniel? The truth is complicated. I miss the boy he used to be. I miss the young man who once defended me with fierce loyalty. But I do not miss the manipulative, entitled adult who thought my love meant he could exploit me without consequence. Daniel has reached out exactly 3 times in the last 2 years. Once 6 months after the TV interview, when his co-workers started treating him differently. Again when his son Oliver was born. And a third time just 3 months ago when Hannah walked out, taking the baby and half their belongings. Each time his only request was money, never an apology, never accountability, always excuses. The last call ended abruptly when he said, "Mom, your pride is worth more to you than your grandson." I answered calmly. Daniel, my dignity is worth exactly as much as my grandson's future. And I hope Oliver learns that lesson better than you ever did. Then, for the first time in my life, I hung up on my son. Strangely, it felt like freedom. Oliver, my grandson, remains the one subject that can bring me to tears. He is 14 months old now, and he doesn't know me. Hannah took every family photograph when she left. To this day, I have no picture of him. Still, I created a college trust in his name managed by Michael that he will access when he turns 18. Whether he chooses to know me or not, my love will be waiting for him. Maybe one day he'll come searching for the truth. Amelia tells me during our weekly dinners. And maybe he'll have the courage to meet his grandmother for himself. Amelia has become my closest confidant. Years ago, she also had to cut ties with toxic relatives, so she understands the cost and the relief of walking away. What amazes me most looking back on these 2 years is how much healthier I've become. The insomnia, headaches, and relentless anxiety I carried during the years with Daniel and Hannah are gone. My doctor smiles every checkup. Margaret, Hernandez said at my last appointment, your body looks 10 years younger. It's incredible what happens when you remove toxic stress. He's right. I walk taller now. My voice no longer shakes when I make hard decisions. I sleep through the night. The flower shop I once worked at closed last year. But I found new joy in the community garden I helped establish in our building. I teach neighbors about herbs, soil, and the simple medicine of tending to living things. It grounds me. My days are full. 3 days a week at the foundation office. 2 days visiting seniors in their homes. Weekends dedicated to writing my second book. A practical guide to spotting and stopping financial abuse within families. Daniel's old bedroom has been transformed into an office. The walls are lined with thank you letters, family photos from the people we've helped, and certificates from universities where I've given lectures. The moments that move me most are mentoring other seniors who are just beginning their own battles. Margaret, a 74-year-old woman, came to us 6 months ago after her son sold her car behind her back to pay gambling debts. With our help, she took him to court, won her money back, and last week sent me a photo of herself beaming beside her new car. Her letter said, Margaret, you showed me that boundaries are not cruelty. They are survival. You showed me that self-love isn't selfish. It's necessary. You showed me it's never too late to fight for yourself. Reading her words reminded me why every tear, every sleepless night, every heartbreak was worth it. Looking back, I know my story doesn't have the fairy tale ending people expect. There is no neat reconciliation, no family gathered happily around a table. But what I have is better. Authenticity, dignity restored, and a purpose that touches lives beyond my own. If I could whisper something to the Margaret who walked into that wedding ballroom 2 years ago, I would tell her, have courage. What's coming will hurt, but on the other side is a life more real and more free than you ever dreamed. And that is the peace I carry now, the certainty that I will never again let anyone treat me as if I am disposable. Tomorrow I'll meet with senators about new laws to protect seniors. Next week we open our 3rd regional center. Next month I'll begin filming a documentary series that will air nationwide. At 70, my life is richer, fuller, and more genuine than it ever was at 68. Ending a toxic relationship wasn't a loss. It was liberation. I've learned that real family is not only inherited, it is chosen. So when people ask if I regret what I did that night in the ballroom, my answer is always the same. Did you like my story? And where are you listening from? Leave a comment below. If my story touched you, consider sending a super thanks, so I can keep sharing more stories like this. Thank you for your kind support. I'll be waiting to read your thoughts. On your screen you'll find 2 more life stories I strongly recommend. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next story with love and with respect.